Unlike past protagonists, Joker's life as a thief and his social life are forever linked. Cultivating relationships is not just an out-of-dungeon side activity. They will directly aid in our thievery, and as a result, they are called confidants in Persona 5 rather than social links. But as is typical of Persona, each relationship is represented by a tarot arcana, and they all connect to the symbolism assigned to that card. The Chariot arcana represents assertiveness, self-control, and victory. In the Fool's Journey, it's connected to the meaning of its previous card, the Lovers, which represents choice. By coming after it, the Chariot shows firm conviction in the choices an individual has made, the assurance that these were the right decision and will pay off. A pretty good reading for someone who just risked it all to take a stand against Kamoshida. The Chariot is also a symbol of physical strength, especially in Persona, where characters associated with it are often athletically gifted and are physical attackers in battle. This also extends to the Personas of this arcana, who tend to be physical attackers, but in Persona 5, Chariot Personas tend to resist or block physical, gun, or both, which makes them very useful to have around. Mythology-wise, they tend to be figures associated with warfare, fighting, or weapons. The personas on the list that I've marked in gold are Royal exclusive paid DLC. Raising the Chariot Confidant will have an impact on these personas as well as other benefits, but how do we go about raising a Confidant, and what exactly does that mean? Each Confidant has 10 rank ups to it. Each one can be initiated by hanging out with the character once you've achieved enough friendship points in previous ranks. The first rank of every Confidant is always free. If you've watched any of my previous Persona series, there's a lot more information here than usual, and there's about to be even more. Because not only does every Confidant in Persona 5 have its own gameplay benefits, but they're also more intrinsically tied to the story than they were in previous games, which means that most of them have their own strange quirks to their rank ups. In Ryuji's case, a few of them unlock hangout spots, places you can invite other confidants to. Rank 5 is also locked out until plot progression, and Rank 7 is weird. It's a fixed event that can only occur at nighttime. Once you reach Rank 6, you'll have to wait for Ryuji to text you an invite to Rank 7 before you can do it. So despite Ryuji being available almost every day, this confidant takes a little bit more effort to max out than you might expect. As for the purple S on Rain, that means sometimes. Most confidants are not available on rainy days, but if the rank up happens to occur completely indoors, then it will be available. For Ryuji, some of his rank ups are outdoors and some of them are indoors, and so I've put a sometimes for Rain. First of all, follow-up, Harisen Recovery, Endure, Protect, some variant of a talk ability, and that mysterious thing at rank 10 are abilities that every party member confidant gets, and all of them pretty much speak for themselves. Though every party member's follow-up attack is unique to them, the confidant abilities exclusive to Ryuji are Stealth Dash at rank 4 and Insta-Kill at rank 7. Stealth Dash is exactly what it says, and it's okay, but it's an ability that I unlock so early most of the time that I'm more used to the game with it than without it. It's also one of the abilities that, as I've highlighted here, carry over to New Game Plus if you max out the Confidants. I really wish it was the rank 7 ability that carried over though, because Insta-Kill is, well, okay. To talk about Insta-Kill, I first have to discuss how it worked in vanilla Persona 5, because there, it was not only one of the worst confidant abilities in the game, it was also one that hindered you more than it helped you. In that game, it would always trigger when you ambushed a weak enemy, and it would end the fight immediately and give you no experience or money. This meant that you had to avoid ambushing weak enemies if you wanted to level up or grind money off them. And there was no way to turn this off too. In Royal, this ability got possibly the biggest glow up of any confidant power in the game. So firstly, it only triggers when you dash into a weak enemy. meaning it will never activate unless you explicitly want it to. It reminds me of a mechanic in Earthbound, where dashing into weak enemies on the field would instantly destroy them without initiating a battle. Instead of going into a battle, the enemy just dies and gives you the full battle rewards, including experience and money. Sure, it only works on enemies around 10 levels below you, but here's the thing. The sheer amount of time you save by not entering battle means that this is, bar none, the best way to grind experience and money in Persona 5 Royal. Just go into a low-level area, dash around for a few minutes, and watch the level ups and money come pouring in. This ability alone makes Ryuji's Confidant worth prioritizing in Royal. And you'll be making him a better party member at the same time. The Fool Arcana exists outside the usual tarot numbering, but is often considered to be number 0. It represents the beginning of a journey, innocence, spontaneity, creativity, and freedom. The idea of taking a leap of faith, but also inexperience. A common tarot motif is the idea of the Fool's Journey, where you start with Fool and then run through the other arcana in order, telling the story of an individual coming into their own in the world, growing from inexperience to maturity. Something I didn't get to mention during Chariot is that the design of the tarot cards in Persona 5 are direct parodies of the Masai tarot deck, being pretty much one-to-one replicas with a humorous twist on them. In the case of Fool, the dog is attacking his leg. Personas of the Fool Arcana tend to be mythological trickster deities or shapeshifters, fitting in with the idea of infinite possibilities. Gameplay-wise, they specialize mainly in ailment skills, but many of the Fool personas in Persona 5 learn the Lucky Punch and Miracle Punch skills. You might have noticed this is an unusually large set of personas, and I've had to color code a lot of them. That's because since Fool is the arcana of most protagonist personas, a lot of the DLC personas ended up here. The gold ones, as mentioned in Chariot, are Royal exclusive paid DLC, while the red ones were paid DLC in vanilla Persona 5, but are free in Royal. As for the persona in Cyan, that's a treasure demon, but that mechanic won't be introduced until another palace. The Fool Arcana is a special one in the Persona games from 3 and onwards, but in 5 it's even more special since for once we've got a social link, Confidant, I may be doing that a lot, with Igor himself. The Fool Confidant is our first plot-based one. We don't need to worry about ranking this up ourselves, it will automatically rank up over the course of the story. And provided you avoid any bad endings, it will always be maxed out by the end of the game. Because of this, I'm actually not going to be showing and going over its Confidant abilities here, as they're abilities that you will always have at certain points in the plot, and as such, I don't want to spoil them. The Magician Arcana represents resourcefulness, talent, the power of creation, and literal tools, which is very fitting to what it enables us to do, but I'll get to that in a moment. The Magician is the first card after the Fool, and it serves as the Fool's call to adventure. Many Magician Arcana characters in the Persona series are heavily involved in the event that draws the protagonist into the mental world to begin with, as the Magician card in tarot readings can also represent the connection between the mortal realm and the divine realm. Of the personas in this arcana, Jack-O-Lantern, Jack Frost, Nekomata, Sandman, and Queen Mab are all based off of popular folk tales. And gameplay-wise, Magician personas have traditionally leaned towards fire skills. That's still mostly the case in Persona 5, but here some use different elements, and some of them even have decent strength and act as mixed attackers. Our Magician Confidant is Morgana, and since he's always in our bag, we never need to worry about making time for him. He'll do that enough himself. As such, Morgana is a plot-based confidant, just like Fool. It will automatically rank up over the course of the story. And while I said I wouldn't normally go over the abilities of plot-based Confidants, Morgana is a party member, so it feels wrong not to. We have the usual ones here, though Morgana gets Hurricane Recovery one rank later than most of the party. Also, because his Confidant is plot-based, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you'll be guaranteed to have all of these abilities like Endure and Protect eventually, but on the other hand, it may take Morgana longer than other party members to get these. Morgana's unique abilities all relates to crafting infiltration tools. At rank 1, you can make infiltration tools in the first place, and at rank 6, you can craft the full set of infiltration tools. We'll be fully introduced to how that works on the evening of the 17th. Morgana has one more ability though, and that's Pickpocket at rank 5, the only one that carries over to New Game Plus. This gives Joker's basic melee attacks a chance to steal an item from the enemy, which is actually pretty cool, but in practice it's very unreliable, and the items you get from it tend to not be that great. Still, it gives you a reason to actually bother with Joker's melee attack. And whenever you need to finish off enemies without wasting SP, you've got a chance of getting an item out of it. As shown by a class question, and the in-game card itself if you speak French, the Priestess Arcana was originally the Popess, and was based directly off the legend of Pope Joan, Makoto's persona. The Priestess Arcana follows the Magician, and while that card was the link between the mortal and divine realms, the Priestess lies more in the divine one, and so represents divine knowledge, along with intuition and the subconscious mind. Reversed though, it can represent keeping secrets, withdrawal, silence, and being disconnected from your intuition, which definitely applied to Makoto before she joined the Phantom Thieves. Mythologically, personas of this arcana fall into two categories. They're either servants or attendants to humanity or other deities, or they're powerful gods of wisdom themselves. Gameplay-wise, they lean firmly towards healing and buffing skills. If they do have any offensive skills, they're likely to be ice and bless attacks. The Priestess Confidant is Makoto Nijima, a party member, first available after defeating Kaneshiro in his boss fight. This Confidant is fairly simple, but as you'd expect from her, her schedule isn't very open. Even starting this requires level 3 knowledge, but the biggest hurdle is that rank 6 requires maxed charm. Charm can be a difficult stat to raise in this game, so I'd recommend taking every opportunity to rank it up if you plan on advancing this Confidant. It's easy to get a matching persona for this one, and Makoto likes a lot of gifts, so not too hard to rank up once you have the stat requirements. Being a party confidant, Makoto has the usual complement of abilities, but what about her unique ones? Well, this is where we have an issue. In my opinion, Makoto may have the weakest unique abilities of any party member confidant. At rank 1, you get Shadow Calculus, which lets you see some skills and item drops on the enemy analysis screen. This won't reveal the skill sets of bosses and mini-bosses, who are the ones you'd really want to know the skills of, and the item drops are generally inferior to what you could get through negotiation, but there are a couple of later enemies that drop very good items for crafting, so I guess this helps pinpoint which those are. And her other one comes at rank 7, Shadow Factorization, which weirdly is the only one that carries over to New Game Plus. Once you have this ability, your cursor will show an X if you highlight an enemy that nulls, repels, or drains the element that you're about to use on them. This was a Navigator ability in Persona 4. Now, this ability would be great if it weren't for the fact that it only works if you already know the enemy's affinities. So rather than giving any new information, it's just a convenience thing so you know that you're not about to smack yourself in the face without having to review the enemy's analysis screen. I suppose you can combo with Akechi's Confidant abilities in Royal, but only if you get lucky. So in summary, Makoto's Confidant abilities are not the best. The Empress is the other form of feminine energy in the tarot after the Priestess, and can represent beauty, motherhood, fertility, creativity, and abundance. It's heavily tied to Mother Earth archetypes. But its roster in Persona 5 consists mostly of vicious female monsters from various myths. Even its more noble figures like Titania and Kali still have violent sides. Perhaps for this reason, most Empress personas in 5 are physical attackers who also focus on ailments, though there's a few magical attackers in there too. There's also a lot of resistances and immunities to gun in this arcana. The Empress Confidant is with Haru Okumura, and even though it opens up infamously late, she's available most days of the week, and her rank ups provide plenty of opportunities to gain points. So she's not as difficult to max out as it seems. The only real obstacle is needing max proficiency early on. On top of these standard Confidant benefits, Haru's unique Confidant abilities involve creating
great vegetables.
You can ask her to cultivate vegetables on the rooftop, just like asking Yusuke to create skill cards, and in a few more days you'll be able to come back and receive the vegetables, as long as the weather isn't rainy or snowing. At rank 5, every harvest will yield one more vegetable, and at rank 7, vegetables will be ready to harvest in one less day. This is weirdly the only ability that carries over to New Game Plus. Now in the base game, Haru's abilities were a little underwhelming, since you could only make SP restoration vegetables, which you are very unlikely to need this late in the game, especially if you've ranked up Sojiro and Kawakami. However, Royal added 2 more vegetables to her repertoire. These bestow a charge or concentrate effect on a party member, and these ones are much more worthwhile to get. And they grow faster than the SP vegetables. I like to have a good stock of these on hand for the super boss fights in New Game Plus.
Alright.
So Yusuke can now duplicate skill cards. Let's find out what all that's about. Or, the game could tell us. So yeah, you can make copies of skill cards. To copy a skill card, give Yusuke a blank card and the card you want to copy. Both cards will be available for you to pick up the next day. This is why I didn't immediately use that card that we got in Madarame's palace, because you can give it to Yusuke for duplication. The blank card will be transformed to create the new skill card. So yeah, you get the original skill card and the new skill card, and it costs 1 blank card. Blank cards can be obtained from search objects in mementos. Also, we got 9 of them for free for the free vanilla game DLC. So I'm going to go more into that now. The Emperor Arcana is a symbol of power, authority, and control, as well as traditional ideas of masculinity and father figures. Yusuke's relation to this arcana, I feel, comes from its more negative aspects when it's taken too far. He suffered from a bad father figure in Madarame, and he struggles with wanting control over every aspect of his life, even those parts that are out of his hands. Personas of this arcana are powerful male figures from myths, many of them being actual kings or rulers, and gameplay-wise, they usually specialize in physical attacks and Zio skills. Yusuke's Confidant is one that's very simple in theory. He's available most of the time, and he doesn't require a lot of points to rank up. Rank 6, however, is gated by a very steep proficiency requirement, and that can be a hurdle to finishing this one early. But this is a Confidant that's well worth your while to focus on. Rank 2 is required to access the Star Confidant, which provides some of the most useful in-battle bonuses in the game. The other benefit is the one we just got a tutorial on, skill card creation. All of Yusuke's non-generic Confidant bonuses have to do with this mechanic, and it's a mechanic that was actually buffed considerably in Royal. In the original game, you could only have Yusuke duplicate skill cards in Tokyo. You'd have to come back the next day to pick up the card he made, but most notably, you had to unlock the ability to duplicate stronger skills by progressing his Confidant further. In Royal, he can duplicate any skill from the beginning, and he can also be asked to make skill cards in safe rooms now, not just in Tokyo. This is much more convenient, as dungeon exploration is when you actually need skill cards. At rank 5, Yusuke will remember every skill card you've had him duplicate previously, and can be asked to recreate that card instead of duplicating a new one. This process doesn't even cost a blank card either. This means that once you've given Yusuke the skill card for a valuable ability like Apt Pupil, Concentrate, or Debilitate, Yusuke will be able to make as many of those skill cards as you want for the rest of the game. This is especially useful when combined with the skill cards you get out of Justine and Caroline's hangouts in Royal. And at rank 7, Yusuke will give you the result of his skill card replication instantly, without you needing to wait a day. Very useful if you need a specific skill right before a boss fight, but remember that he's still limited to making one skill card per day. This means only one per dungeon visit, so use it wisely. That said, once Yusuke is at rank 7, you should be asking him to make one skill card every time you visit the dungeon. There is no reason not to. Skill card duplication was a mechanic that I personally overlooked a lot in the original Persona 5, but its improvements in Royal meant that I ended up using it far more here, and I recommend you do so too. Hierophant is a weird arcana in the context of Persona 5, as it typically represents authority, following the rules, tradition, and institutions. However, as it comes right before the Lover's Arcana in the Fool's Journey, which represents choice, it can represent one exploring the worldviews and belief systems of those older than themselves, before making the decision of what they want to do with their own lives. But within the Persona series, characters of the Hierophant Arcana are usually older mentor figures towards the protagonist, and are often weighed down by a tragic event in their past. What does that mean for Sojiro? Well, we'll find out. Their personas are mythological figures associated with teaching and imparting wisdom. However, gameplay-wise, I couldn't find a clear theme among them, other than that many of them use both offensive and support skills. In Royal, the Hierophant Arcana actually suffered pretty badly, since several of its personas from the vanilla version were poached by other Arcanas. However, don't write it off just yet, as the ultimate persona you get by maxing it out is, in my opinion, one of the best in Royal. But in terms of Sojiro himself, he is our first nighttime confidant, and a convenient one too, since he's right there in LeBlanc. And all of his rank ups happen indoors, so they can be done during rain. You might also notice that Sojiro is the only out-of-school confidant to be affected by the exam bonus. It makes sense that he'd want Joker to do well on his tests. Now, since Joker and Sojiro's relationship didn't exactly get off to a good start, this is a very slow one to rank up at the start. Don't worry about this, it's perfectly normal. It can't be raised above rank 5 until later in the story anyway, and its higher ranks go by much faster. But that doesn't mean they'll be easy. Rank 7 requires maxed kindness, and rank 9 requires one of the most difficult side quests in the game. As a consolation prize though, every visit with Sojiro, even non-rank ups, raises Joker's kindness. As for rank 3 requiring you to brew coffee at least once, well, that gets into Sojiro's confidant bonuses. As he said, Sojiro's bonuses are all about teaching Joker how to make coffee and curry, and that translates to consumables that restore SP, and a pretty good amount of SP too, especially for the early game. The problem is that brewing coffee or curry requires you to spend the evening. It raises charm, but there are still typically better things to use your time on. The Hierophant Confidant actually gets a lot better in combination with another, and that's Temperance. Once you start the Temperance Confidant, you'll gain the ability to pay someone else to make coffee or curry for you while you do other things with your evening time slots. With enough money, you'll be able to amass a very large supply of SP restoring items, and that makes clearing palaces in one day much easier. At the higher ranks, the coffee and curry can recover 100 SP, which is very good even towards the end game. Just as a personal note though, I find curry tips at rank 9 to be possibly the most pointless confidant ability in the game, because in the very next rank you get an even better version of it. And taking Hierophant from rank 9 to 10 is not hard either. Oh, and all of these bonuses carry over to New Game Plus. More specifically, maxing this confidant gives you the ability to make Master Coffee and Master Curry from the moment you begin Hierophant again. Overall, Hierophant's bonuses are simple, but honestly they're quite good, especially once you start Temperance. The Lover's Arcana is a tarot card whose meaning has been misunderstood and distorted over the years. While it's now taken to be a symbol of love and relationships, it originally signified choice, as the card shows a man having to decide between two potential romantic partners. As the card's symbolic meaning originated at a time where marriage was pretty much irreversible, it represents having to make a major, irreversible decision that will affect the rest of your life, and the idea of sacrificing one potential life path for another. In some interpretations, it means deciding between the right choice and the easy choice. Personas of this arcana mainly play into the modern day meaning though, being figures associated with romance or fae creatures from mythology. Gameplay-wise, the Lover's Arcana has traditionally been associated with healing skills, and that's mostly true here, but in Persona 5, a lot of them break the mold by focusing on buffs or ailments as well. And some even run full-on offensive skill sets. Our Lover's Confidant is An Takamaki. It opens up early, but you need level 2 kindness to progress to rank 2. Like Ryuji, An's Confidant unlocks a lot of hangout spots. And apart from being unavailable on Thursdays and Saturdays, it's a pretty easy one to raise. Most of her rank ups give you more than enough points to reach the next rank. An is also our first potential romance option. In Persona 5, the choice between platonic or romantic routes for the romanceable confidant always occurs at rank 9, and for An, there's nothing you need to do to unlock her romance route. You'll always have the choice of the two. Your choice of platonic or romantic does not matter from a pure gameplay standpoint. The confidant's progression to rank 10 will proceed exactly the same either way, you'll just get different dialogue. In Persona 5, your choice of romance is really a matter of personal opinion. There is a trophy for romancing at least someone. It only affects your access to some optional scenes later on, as well as giving you an item that, while it has a different name for every romance, they all have the exact same gameplay effects. What I'm trying to say is, ship Joker with whoever you want, it really doesn't matter. An is a party member, and so she has the Talk, Follow Up, Hurry Send Recovery, Endure, Protect, and Rank 10 abilities, same as every other one. Her two unique confidant abilities are, at rank 4, Sexy, Technique, Heart, which is actually pretty amazing. As long as An is present in battle and at rank 4, she has a chance to just outright cancel one enemy's turn, and this works on everything except bosses and mini-bosses. Not reliable, but it can really save your life in certain situations. Her rank 5 ability is significantly less useful though. Crocodile Tears only applies to one specific mechanic called Hostage Negotiation. This is different to the normal Shadow Negotiation for recruiting or getting money. Hostage Negotiation is a very, very rare mechanic that some people go entire playthroughs without ever seeing, and even if you do see it, it's very unlikely that you'll need an ability to make it easier. So, with An's two unique abilities, one's not great, but the other is actually one of the better ones in the party, so it averages out. The Justice Arcana represents, well, justice and fairness. Specifically the idea that every action leads to a fair result. This also makes it a symbol of accountability. While an individual makes a choice at the Lover's Arcana, and solidifies their conviction in this choice with the Chariot, Justice comes next and reminds them that their decisions have consequences, and that they should be prepared to accept those consequences. For mythology, this one's very simple. All of the personas of this arcana are Judeo-Christian orders of angels. And gameplay-wise, it's also simple. They all specialize in bless skills, the earlier ones being weak to curse, while the later ones usually shed that weakness. Some of them use status ailments in this game as well. The Justice Confidant, however, is one of the more unique ones in Royal, because it's both similar and different to how it was before. Goro Akechi was always a Confidant and was always the Justice Arcana even in the original. However, the entire Confidant with him has been remade and rewritten from the ground up. So for all intents and purposes, Justice is the third and final new Confidant in Royal. And so all of the information I give here is not going to apply to the original in any way. Goro hangs out in Kichijoji just outside Penguin Sniper, and he's a nighttime Confidant, though he's available almost all week, and even on rainy days. The downside is, this Confidant has some fairly steep stat requirements. Rank 3 requires level 3 knowledge and charm, while rank 7 requires level 4 knowledge. In addition, this one has a lot of plot locks. And while it doesn't have a Mementos request per se, rank 8 is special in that Joker has to win a solo Mementos fight in order to progress the Confidant. And this fight can be difficult if you're unprepared. As for the benefit to this Confidant, the actual biggest one isn't an official Confidant bonus, it's the fact that rank 4 unlocks the Jazz Club. The Jazz Club is a very, very important facility for improving your party members in Royal. And if you're not following a guide, I'd recommend getting this to rank 4 as soon as possible. In order to not miss out on anything significant, you'll need to unlock the Jazz Club before June 26th. Akechi's actual Confidant bonuses all relate to discovering the elemental weaknesses of enemies. At rank 2, you have a chance to reveal one elemental affinity of an enemy at the start of battle, usually a weakness. At rank 4, you have a chance to fully scan one enemy upon entering battle. These abilities aren't massively useful if you keep up with fusing and recruiting personas, since I find that's the best way to reveal their elemental affinities. But still, it's nice if these abilities activate against something you've never fought before. They unfortunately don't work on bosses or mini-bosses though. Other than that, that's pretty much it to this Confidant. A bit underwhelming, but the Jazz Club more than makes up for it, so definitely get this to rank 4 as soon as you can. The Hermit Arcana represents introspection, soul-searching, and solitude. When it appears during a pivotal point in one's life, it calls them to reflect and look inward, to re-evaluate the best path, rather than seeking external guidance. The card depicts a hermit navigating a cave with only a lantern to guide them. But unlike the fool about to wander off a cliff, this figure knows what they're doing. Mythologically, personas of this arcana are deities or figures that rarely appear before humans directly, but rather assist them from the shadows. Gameplay-wise, they don't have an obvious theme in their learn sets, though many resist both Bless and Curse, and some learn the counter skills and Makarakan, taking the arcana's meaning of reflection literally. Our Hermit Confidant in Persona 5 is everyone's favourite geek Futaba Sakura. Though it starts somewhat late for a party Confidant, and she's not available many days of the week, I don't find this an especially difficult one to rank up as far as points go. Which is a good thing, as you need level 4 kindness to even reach rank 2. Futaba's Confidant is unique in a couple of ways though. Firstly, it is the only party member Confidant to require a Mementos mission. Secondly, Futaba is heavily involved in the second half of Sojiro's Hierophant Confidants. This mostly comes into play once you unlock Hierophant's Mementos mission. At that point, not only does Hierophant become unavailable until the mission is completed, but so does Hermit. So if you're making Futaba's Confidant a priority, you might want to hold off on Hierophant rank 8 until you've completed hers. And making it a priority is a good thing because Futaba's Confidant benefits are amazing for her usefulness in battle. This Confidant will automatically start around the end of August, and because of that, Futaba will always have access to moral support, which gives her a random chance to cast buffs or healing on the party. At rank 2, she gets Memento Scan. Now, this is even better than just fully mapping out a floor. Since it also includes the exit, you're able to completely skip the floor once it activates. At rank 4, you have a chance of instantly starting a battle with a hold-up, and this can happen even if you're surrounded. At rank 6, moral support gets incredibly broken. She now has access to her super move, Ultra Charge, which gives charge and concentrate to the entire party. She can also sometimes restore SP. Ultra Charge, as you'd imagine, is completely busted. The only downside is you really don't want this to trigger while your party is brainwashed. I've had that happen to me before. At rank 7, after every battle, Futaba has a chance of restoring all treasure search objects in the metaverse. Useful for getting a bit more money, I guess. At rank 9, if 2 or more party members are KO'd in a single enemy action, Futaba has a chance to swap them out for backup members instantly. While you want to avoid situations where this will activate, it is very helpful when it does. At rank 10, Futaba actually gets 2 benefits. Firstly is the thing that every other party member gets at rank 10, but the second is Final Guard, which will nullify an attack on the entire party if it would have KO'd 1 or more party members. A fun fact is this ability was named Last Guardian in early trailers and was probably changed for trademark reasons. More than any other party member, you really want to do Futaba's Confidant. Her level up abilities are not great, but her Confidant skills make her one of the most broken members of the party. Before I start, I have to mention that Chihire's Japanese voice actress Miyu Matsuki passed away before the release of the original Persona 5. The game is widely believed to be her last voice acting role. Due to new dialogue, she had to be recast for both Royal and the anime. The Wheel of Fortune Arcana represents fate, chance, and the ongoing cycle of life. It's one of the most on-the-nose cards in the deck, and even more so in Persona 5, but reversed it can mean resistance to change, and resigning yourself to
the endless now,
instead of trying to change your life. Personas of this arcana are mythological figures associated with fate and luck. In earlier Persona games, they focused almost entirely on wind skills. In 5, they generally don't use wind apart from a few, though most of them resist or nullify wind. The Fortune Arcana in P5 is represented by a literal fortune teller, and it's one of the most awkward to start. It requires spending 3 nights, 100,000 yen, and completing a Mementos request. On top of this, getting to rank 8 requires a second Mementos quest, and it's the hardest Mementos boss in the game. Given the ridiculous lengths you have to go to even start this Confidant, sure, you get the 100,000 yen refunded later, but by then the damage has been done. What benefits could possibly be worth all that? Oh, nothing much, just the best daily life benefits in the entire game apart from Temperance. Actually, it's only 2 of Chihire's abilities that are really worth it, but they're so good you don't need much else. The first is Luck Reading at rank 1. For 5,000 yen, which can be done at any time, day or night, even if she isn't available to hang out with, you get more points in a chosen social stat for the rest of the day. Money permitting, you should do this every time you plan on raising a social stat. And then there's rank 5. For 5,000 yen, you get to deepen your bond with a confidant of your choice, and this does not use up any time. It's the equivalent of 1 music note, but that can make all the difference, especially since it is affected by the matching Arcana bonus. Even most online guides heavily underestimate how good this is. If you're using this right, you will never need a generic spend time event with any confidant from now on. This ability was actually moved to earlier in the Confidant in Royal. It was originally rank 7. Chihire's other benefits aren't as amazing as those, but they're still good. At rank 3, for 5,000 yen, you can increase the money earned in battle when winning with an all-out attack. Once you unlock this, always do it before going to a palace or mementos. It more than pays for itself. Celestial Reading at rank 8 is the only ability that doesn't carry over to New Game Plus, probably because Fusion Alarm needs to unlock for it to be useful. It's very pricey, but money is easy to get in this game. It instantly triggers a Fusion Alarm, which is the only way to get one in the real world, and makes alarms more common if you go into the palace that day. Ranks 7 and 10 are kind of weird in that they're not great only because they give you information that you can easily just look up online. Special Fate Reading will give you a preview of all unobtained abilities for a confidant of your choice. This was actually her rank 10 ability in the vanilla version, but her new rank 10 ability will highlight in red for the rest of the day the dialogue choices that give the most points when interacting with confidants. The game itself does warn you, though, that you'll need to be careful you don't accidentally start romantic routes this way, because sometimes the options that give more points do lead to romance paths. This confidant's abilities are a bit hit and miss in the later ranks, but ranks 1 and 5 are so phenomenally good they make up for it. The Strength Arcana typically represents emotional inner strength rather than physical strength, and the taming of raw animal passions and gut instincts. This arcana is populated by mythical beasts, and in gameplay terms, they lean towards physical skills, endurance, and learning skills like counter and sharp students. I'm giving the short version because I really want to get into this confidant's gameplay. Strength is a very special confidant, and its progression is even more non-standard than Moon. Justine and Caroline will give you requests to bring them a specific persona with a specific skill. Once you have it, you can talk to them and rank up. This does not use up time, and can be done anytime you have access to the Velvet Room. Meaning if you put it off until much later, it is entirely possible to complete this whole confidant in one day. If you've played Persona 4, you'll recognize this confidant as being almost exactly the same as that game's Empress social link. So rather than a schedule, I've listed instead the minimum level you need to be to fuse the personas they want for each rank. A couple of other points. Firstly, you are allowed to use skill cards to make personas with the skill set that they want. In many cases, this is a lot easier than passing down those skills through fusion. Secondly, once you have reached what was the final dungeon in the original Persona 5, you are no longer able to rank up this confidant. And this is true even in Royal, despite Royal adding an extra playable semester after the original finale. There is plenty of time between now and then, though. As for its confidant abilities, as Soljiro would say, oh boy. I'm gonna do something a little unique here and show the abilities in the original pre-Royal version of this game first. I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. Rank 2 unlocks special fusion recipes via the group guillotine. Rank 3 unlocks a new Velvet Room facility, Lockdown. This gets fully explained in a tutorial later. Basically, it lets you leave a persona for a while and it will slowly gain stats and randomly learn skills to resist or dodge its weaknesses. At rank 5, you unlock more options from Group Guillotine. Some of these are actually required to make the ultimate personas you get for maxing out Confidants. Rank 8 in Vanilla P5 lets Lockdown bestow Null and Evade passive skills. And rank 10 is the real prize. Meet the most broken Confidant ability in the game. At rank 10, which you can get at a minimum of level 51, you gain the option to essentially bribe Igor to let you fuse personas above Joker's level. This bribe ranges from 100 to 300,000 yen on average, which is nothing at the point you have access to it, and it is certainly nothing in exchange for getting level 90 personas at level 50. If that doesn't sound broken enough, this also gives you access to the entire party's ultimate weapons much earlier than you're supposed to, so it is broken on multiple different levels. Once you have this, all difficulty in the game is basically gone if you choose to use it. And so, when I first learned that Persona 5 was getting an updated re-release, the first thought in my mind was, they're gonna nerf special treatments. There's no way they wouldn't. I mean, I totally see this coming. And so, of course, in Royal, they moved special treatment down to rank 5 and gave you an even better version of special treatment at rank 10. What?! There are no words to describe how shocked I was when I found this out. They actually buffed the most broken thing in the original game. You now have access to personas effectively in the 80s to 90s, in the mid-20s. And they may have nerfed the Mementos money exploit, but they added an even better Mementos money exploit via Ryuji's insta-kill, so money is still no object in this game. I have no idea what the developers were thinking when they did this, but yep, it's a thing that's in this game, and it's probably the biggest reason why Royal is considered significantly easier than Vanilla P5. Oh, and as you can see here, all of these carry over to New Game Plus if you max out Strength. And honestly, I think Special Treatment is perfectly fine in New Game Plus. It makes it easy to get the personas you may have forgotten to fuse at the end of your first playthrough. But distracting myself from that for a bit, they also buffed Lockdown in Royal. This skill that it gives you is now dependent on the persona's level. The higher their level, the better the weakness covering skill they'll learn. I much prefer it working this way. So, yeah, that's Strength, it's broken. Oh, and guess what? In Royal, the ultimate persona you get for maxing out this Arcana is also amazing. Depicting a man hanging upside down from a tree, an allusion to Odin hanging himself from Yggdrasil to gain knowledge, the Hanged Man Arcana represents self-sacrifice, but also looking at things from new perspectives, taking a moment to pause and reflect before making major decisions, or the feeling of being figuratively stuck between two things. Two worlds, two different life paths, two extremes. It has a lot of possible meanings. Just like the personas of this Arcana, which can be martyr figures, figures stuck between two states of being, or in the case of Huapo, literally associated with hanging. Gameplay-wise, they usually have high endurance stats and lean towards using fire in Persona 5. A common theme in their learn sets is having some kind of passive skill that buffs the rest of their moveset, whether it be an ailment booster or an elemental damage booster. The Hangman Arcana is represented by Munehisa Iwai, a character we met all the way back at the very start of the story, but whose Confidant we couldn't start until now because it has a very steep level 4 guts requirement just to initiate it. And we'll be needing maxed guts at rank 8. This one also requires a Mementos mission, but it's one of the easiest ones in the game in my opinion. The Guts requirement is much more of an issue. Guts was a very important stat to raise, especially in Royal. This guy is one of the reasons why. In base Persona 5, EY's Confidant was not that special. It is, in my opinion, one of the most improved in Royal, for two reasons. The first is that the ultimate Hanged Man persona has one of the best traits in the game. I can't stress this enough. That trait alone is worth maxing Hanged Man for. And then there's his Confidant benefits. All of them have to do with customizing your guns. In base Persona 5, EY could not customize guns you made via itemization in the Velvet Room, and since all the best guns were made that way, that made his customizations almost worthless. In Royal, EY can customize Velvet Room guns now. On top of that, his customizations are very worthwhile now. Not only can they greatly increase the accuracy or damage of guns, but at rank 3 you get access to camo customization. Status ailment guns are the most reliable way to inflict burn, freeze, and shock once you've unlocked them. Given how good technical damage is in Royal, you really want these. Unfortunately, it's dependent on the party member who gets which ailment, and the ones who get stuck with burn get the short end of the stick, since only wind technicals off that. Freeze and shotguns, though, are good enough to trivialize any encounter that doesn't null gun. Additionally, there's an ability of a later Confidant that makes ailment guns even better. Finally, EY got a brand new rank 10 ability in Royal. At that point, all gun customizations become free. So not only did guns themselves get a massive upgrade in Royal, but EY's much improved Confidant makes them even better. In tarot readings, the Death Arcana is the epitome of looks scary but is really just misunderstood, which makes it fitting that the Death Confidant opens up so early in Persona 5. You may notice the lack of French text on the card. In the deck Persona 5 draws from, this Arcana doesn't have a name, it's referred to as the Nameless Arcana sometimes. But the Death card does not symbolize literal death, rather change and transformation, the end of the old and the start of the new. Its meaning is nearly always positive, and can be summed up as one door closes, another opens. It also exists around the middle of the Fool's journey and marks a turning point in the Arcana. The ones before it represent the kind of people the Fool will encounter, while the ones afterwards represent more abstract concepts. Personas of this Arcana do lean into its misunderstood meaning though, being mainly symbols of death, ill omens, or just being associated with skulls. Gameplay-wise, they heavily specialize in curse skills, both instant death and not, but also like to use a lot of ailments. The Death Confidant is represented by Tae Takemi at her clinic in Yongenjaya. This one's unique when it comes to ranking it up, as she's available every day. However, after every visit, you will not be able to see her again for another 3 days. Gotta make sure there are no side effects before taking her medicine again. Most visits to her have the side effect of slightly raising your gut stat, though you will need guts level 2 to even get to rank 2 of this. Much later, rank 8 has a few steep requirements. You need level 4 charm, and this is also the first Confidant we're seeing that requires a side quest at one point. Almost every non-party member Confidant does this. Takemi is also a romance option, although hers is a little unique. While you always get the choice of route in rank 9, if you try to go for her romance route, but didn't choose the right options in earlier ranks, she will actually reject you. And here I'd like to give a big shout out to Fither, because were it not for his video, I never would have known this mechanic existed. If you're following a guide, you won't need to worry, as the options guides tell you to choose are the romance flags anyway, but I find it fascinating that this mechanic exists. There are 2 other romances that also work this way. But there's another way that Takemi's romantic route is unique, because if you choose it, rank 10 is moved from daytime to nighttime, along with every other optional hangout from then on. Thankfully, most Max Confidant guides allow leeway for either option. As for Takemi's Confidant abilities, being a glorified shopkeeper, they're pretty basic. All of them either increase the selection of items at her shop, or give you a discount. And everything but the discount carries over to New Game Plus, which means you have access to the full selection of items there from the beginning, provided you max this Confidant out in the previous playthrough. At higher ranks, Takemi sells better healing items, culminating in being able to buy full party revival items, although they're pretty expensive even with the discounts. But the most important rank is arguably 5. At rank 5, she starts selling some accessories, including something called the SP Adhesive. This gives the equipper SP regeneration every turn in battle, and it is incredibly useful for completing palaces in one day. They do cost 100,000 yen each without the discount though, so you may not be able to afford them in the early dungeons, but once you can get these, they are incredible. In general, this is a Confidant that I would recommend getting to rank 7 as early as possible, but after that point you can feel free to prioritize others. As a character though, her Confidant is one of my favourites. The Temperance Arcana represents patience, moderation, and a balancing of opposites. And it may have its best representative in Persona 5, an overworked, constantly stressed teacher who moonlights as a maid to make ends meet. Temperance can also refer to taking in other perspectives and the mixing of different things to create something new. Personas of this arcana are mythological beasts, usually animal rather than human, associated with peace, harmony, and balance. And gameplay-wise, they have no obvious preferences in stats or skills. You can find just about anything you want here. But now get ready, the Temperance Confidant is one of the most complicated in the game, and there's a lot to go through here. So, firstly, you need level 3 guts to even start this. You also have to have done Operation Maidwatch. She's not available most of the time and is a nighttime only Confidant. But the real caveat is that for most rank ups, every time you want to even spend time with Kawakami, you have to pay 5,000 yen. Even for generic spend time sessions that don't result in a rank up. After reaching rank 8 of this Confidant, rank 9 is locked out until you complete Kawakami's Mementos mission. In order to receive this mission, you have to have a non-plot school day after reaching rank 8. On a day like this, you will automatically be approached by Kawakami for a scene that gives you the Mementos mission. This can be a huge problem, because during long stretches of plot or summer vacation, you won't be attending school, and that means you can't get this mission. In fact, if you leave this Confidant too late, it's possible to miss out on her Mementos mission permanently, making this Confidant uncompletable. Also, rank 9 is the romance route split. Yes, Kawakami is a romance option, yes, I know it's controversial. For now though, I do want to mention something weird about Kawakami's romance route. Many Confidants can be invited for special hangouts at hangout spots that give you a decoration you can put in your room afterwards. There's no Thieves' Den award or trophy for getting all of these. They're purely cosmetic and an optional side activity, but if for some reason you're concerned about getting all of them, there's one room decoration that requires you to be on Kawakami's romance route, and this is the only decoration that does this. The other thing about her romance route is that all of the other adult confidants will reject you if you don't choose specific options during your rank ups. And I've tried and I haven't found any way for Kawakami to reject you. Logically, she should be able to, given that she's an adult romance option, but if anyone knows if this is possible, please tell me. I'd like to do more research into this. So, this confidant sounds like a lot of hassle. Why would you go through with it? Well, it's because that while Strength was the best confidant in the game for battle gameplay, Temperance is by far the best confidant in the game for daily life abilities. At rank 1, you'll have the ability to read, make infiltration tools, study, or sleep, which just gives you points towards a random confidant, during Kawakami's classes. These happen at set days throughout the year, and so the earlier you start Temperance, the more of these days you'll have access to. Reading I find the biggest benefit of this, as it makes getting through all the books much easier. At rank 3, you'll be able to pay Kawakami 5,000 yen to have her make coffee or do laundry for you. Something to note is that anything that Kawakami makes or does not count towards Thieves' Den achievements. Also, if you call Kawakami to make coffee, she'll only make one batch of coffee. Joker doing it himself gives you 2. And additionally, if you call Kawakami to make coffee, you will not be able to spend time with Sojiro and advance the Hierophant confidant, as obviously none of his rank ups are written with the assumption there's a maid standing behind him. At rank 5, you'll get the benefits of Slack Off in every teacher's classes. At rank 6, Kawakami can now make curry or infiltration tools for you, and she won't question that at all. Rank 9 gives this confidant an additional benefit the game never tells you about or lists in the menu. Once she reaches this point, all of Kawakami's services, including what she unlocks at rank 10, become free. From that point on, there's no reason not to have her making coffee or doing laundry every night. You'll be getting extra items on top of what you do with your time otherwise. I believe that this aspect does not carry over to New Game Plus, even though Special Massage does. Nothing else carries over either, which means that you'll want to rank this one up in every playthrough, New Game Plus or not. And rank 10 is the real prize here. This lets you call Kawakami after going to the metaverse, either a palace or mementos, to give you a massage that lets you go out at night. This game has a lot of nighttime confidants, and because of this, Special Massage is almost a requirement for an efficient max confidants run. There is a reason that once unlocking Temperance, most online guides focus on it as much as possible until it's maxed out. Special Massage is just that good. In summary, if I was asked what the 2 best confidants were for gameplay benefits, I would say no question, Strength and Temperance. Unlike those that are often mistaken for being negative, the Devil Arcana is one of the traditionally negative cards in the tarot deck. It symbolizes being held back or restricted by negative thoughts, bad habits, or addiction, and is sometimes a symbol of the shadow self in general. It's a rare card that has a more positive meaning when reversed, representing freedom from these restraints. While in past games, this arcana included evil or at least dangerous deities from various religions, in Persona 5 it's populated almost exclusively by Abrahamic devil figures, mainly coming from the Ars Goetia. Gameplay-wise, they favour curse skills and a lot of ailments, and often have skills that increase the success rate of ailments. But in Persona 5, the devil is a bad card in other ways, because it represents Ichiko Oya, not only one of the least popular confidant characters in the game, but also having the least liked confidant bonuses in the game, but we'll get to those in a moment. One good side of this is that most visits to Oya raise your charm stat slightly, and it's pretty easy to get a matching persona due to Incubus being readily available in Kamoshida's palace, and it's available most nights of the week. There isn't a whole lot special to this Confidant. It does have a Mementos mission at rank 8, and it is also a romance option, and like Takemi, you need to have selected certain options earlier in the Confidant, or Oya will reject you. But while I'm here, one warning I have to give about the Devil Confidant. If you are completely blind on this game's story and want to experience it unspoiled, I would recommend holding off on doing the higher ranks of this Confidant until at least November. This one's a little more closely tied to the story than it seems. And now, it's time for the dunking you've all been waiting for. In the vanilla game, Oya had what were widely considered to be the worst Confidant bonuses in the game. They were drastically buffed in Royal, and they're still arguably the worst in the game. The main problem is that Oya's bonuses all relate to making the security meter less punishing, except it wasn't really punishing to begin with. Due to how generous the stealth mechanics are, most players won't really need Oya's bonuses to make managing security, well, manageable. Royal tried to indirectly buff Oya by having the security meter always start at 40%, but even then, it's pretty easy to lower it by ambushing enemies, and you're unlikely to have the security meter high unless you explicitly want to attract treasure demons, so in a sense her abilities can even be detrimental. In the original Persona 5, you had to go to Oya and ask her to write an article before the palace's security meter would be affected. In Royal, her bonuses mainly affect the palace directly, such as lowering the security level every time you find a new safe room, and increasing the rate at which it decreases when you ambush enemies. Her rank 10 ability is kinda nice, I guess. You know how at 0% security you can ambush enemies from any direction? Well, at rank 10 of Devil, you can do that at any security level. But that's pretty much the only good bonus this Confidant has. I will say, I don't actually hate this one as far as its overall storyline goes, but you know something is bad when not even Royal buffs could fix it. The Tower Arcana, or House of God if you can read the French on this card, is a reference to the Tower of Babel. It's one of the typically negative cards in the deck, representing destruction, sudden catastrophe, and pride before a fall. Even in its more positive interpretations, it still heralds an unprecedented upheaval in one's life, shocking them out of complacency and forcing them to take a new path. Personas of this arcana, mythologically, are either figures that have fallen from grace, or gods or deities associated with rebellion, or in Persona 5's case, typically violence, since Red Rider is part of it. Gameplay-wise, they tend to favour aggressive skill sets, and a few of them learn the best gun attack one-shot kill. The Tower Confidant is represented by a grade school gamer, Shinya Oda, which is worrying for his future, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. This Confidant is quite late, requires you to have attempted Winners Don't Use Cheats, and access to Akihabara, but it gives a pretty significant kindness boost most times you visit him. The ranks taking place in the arcade should be doable during rain, but sometimes you'll step outside, so rain may still affect the availability. Shinya has a couple of awkward aspects to his Confidant though. The first, which I haven't listed here, is if you're going for all the room decorations, his room decoration hangout has a few strict dates that it must occur on, making it very easy to miss. Secondly, this Confidant requires a Mementos request after reaching rank 8, but he won't give you the quest immediately. You actually need to wait for him to text you, and then you'll be able to undertake the request in Mementos. And when he texts you may be unpredictable depending on where you are in the plot at the time, since it can only occur on a night with no plot-based text threads. After Iwai, Shinya is the other Confidant that boosts guns. For starting it, you gain the Downshot ability, which lets you instantly down one enemy, very good for negotiating with things that have no weaknesses. This ability was changed quite a bit in Royal, because in the base game it cost all your ammo, but since that gets refilled every fight now, instead you only get to use it once per infiltration, which is quite a steep restriction. Rank 6 improves it by letting you use it 3 times instead. In the base game, this reduced its ammo cost instead. And on that note, Shinya actually lost one of his abilities from the base game that increased your ammo capacity. I guess they felt that wasn't as necessary in Royal. The issue is that that combined with Cheap Shot meant you could probably use Downshot more than 3 times per infiltration originally. Also, say it with me, due to the buffs to technical damage in Royal, Downshot is not as necessary as it used to be. Rank 2 grants an entirely new mechanic, Bullet Hail. The tip I have is to hold the button rather than mashing it, and you will always get the full effect. This just shaves off a percentage of every enemy's HP at the start of the fight, and when upgraded with Electric Slug, it's guaranteed, provided you hold the button, to halve all enemies' HP, which is kinda nice. Rank 3 lets you fire a warning shot in negotiation to scare an enemy and make it easier to obtain a persona. I don't find myself using this often, but at least it's an option. Rank 5 though is in my opinion his best ability in Royal. I talked earlier about how broken status ailment guns are, and this makes them even more likely. His Confidant is worth doing for this ability alone. His rank 10 ability, Order Special, allows Joker's gun attacks to pierce resistances and always hit the enemy. The problem with this is it only applies to actual weapon attacks and not persona skills. So if you have a persona with one-shot kill or triple down, these won't pierce immunities. Overall, Order is the one Confidant that I'd say possibly got worse in Royal compared to the base game. I feel Downshot was better there, but it's mostly because in the original, this Confidant was necessary to turn guns from bad to actually okay, while in Royal, guns are already good from the beginning. And while I'm ranting about Downshot, there's a Thieves' Den award for doing 30 Downshots. And even with 3 per infiltration, that's a hard ask given how late into the game this Confidant opens up. If you're going for this one, never forget to use up all your Downshots, every Palace visit, every Mementos visit, and even in New Game Plus. The Star Arcana symbolizes hope following tragedy. Fitting, as in the deck it comes right after the Tower. It's also a symbol of personal renewal, a restoration of confidence and faith in oneself. Personas of this arcana are typically mythological figures associated with celestial bodies, literally stars in many cases, as well as multi-talented gods and heroes with many spheres of influence. Gameplay-wise, in Persona 5, they've kind of swapped roles with the Fortune Arcana from previous games, in that they primarily use wind attacking skills. Some of them also use Psi. Our star confidant for Persona 5 is Hifumi Togo, located at the Kanda Church. As a tip, if you respond to her text messages, you won't have to pay the train fare. She isn't available until you've reached rank 2 of Emperor and have level 3 Charm, but most visits with her raise your knowledge stats. I'd like to draw attention to rank 4 as it unlocks Jinbocho, Booktown. This is a very important location in Royal, so it's recommended you get this as soon as you can. There are a few other ways to unlock it, but this Confidant is the easiest, I find. Reaching rank 8 requires you to complete a Mementos request. In order to receive this request, you need to have maxed knowledge after rank 7. And Hifumi is also one of this game's romance options, and no special flags are required to unlock the route. Before I go over her Confidant abilities, which are very good, I'd also like to stress that the Star Confidant's ultimate persona is very important, so there are 2 reasons to max out this one. Hifumi's Confidant bonuses are all about providing additional options in battle. At rank 1, you're allowed to swap out current party members for reserve members in the middle of a battle, but only during Joker's turn, and it will consume his turn. Rank 3 unlocks a separate set of follow-up attacks from backup members when Joker downs an enemy. These are actually different from the follow-ups unlocked through the party member confidants. At rank 5, you're allowed to attempt to escape even while surrounded. At rank 7, you'll get double money if you win a battle in 1 turn after an ambush. Given that this is very easy to do in Persona 5's Rocket Tag gameplay and easy stealth, this ability is gonna see a lot of use. At rank 9, for some reason the only one of her abilities that carries to New Game Plus, you're able to instantly escape a battle at any time. Just choose the run option and you'll get out of there. This is very useful if you get jumped by the Reaper and Mementos. And rank 10 expands on the rank 1 ability. You can now swap out party members with reserves during anybody's turn. But it still costs a turn to do this. Overall, Hifumi's abilities are great, and the only complaint I tend to hear about them is they should have been abilities you had by default and not locked behind a Confidant. Since pop culture has a fixation on using death as the doom and gloom tarot card, it tends to be overlooked that Moon is one of the actual bad cards in the deck. It represents fear, illusions, and by association, deception. It's also a symbol of the subconscious, but more in the sense of traumatic repressed memories. The moon can also be a sign that you're projecting your own insecurities onto others. When this card appears in a reading, it's taken as a sign to let go of all of these things. Personas of this arcana are mythological figures associated with the moon, the night, or illusions, with many of them being real-world cryptid myths. And gameplay-wise, they tend to use some combination of bless, curse, including instant kills, and ailment skills. Many of them learn ailment boosting skills too. Additionally, almost all of them null curse. There's a lot more going on with Mishima than it appears. But in gameplay terms, Mishima's Confidant is actually quite simple. Throughout the game, he will give you Mementos requests. Once you beat that target in Mementos and complete the request, you can then report to Mishima to rank up. Even though Mishima's rank ups have their own conversations with dialogue choices and music notes, none of those matter. He is guaranteed to rank up every time you meet with him. This also means there's no need to carry a moon persona while interacting with him. There are a couple of things about this Confidant though to keep in mind. The first is that Mishima moves location a lot as more parts of Tokyo open up. But that shouldn't be a problem if you're looking closely at the fast travel map. The second is that when you are able to rank up Mishima, I would recommend you do so as soon as possible. There are occasional stretches of plot where Mishima becomes unavailable with no warning for large stretches of time. I ran into this during my first Royal playthrough and actually panicked that I may have missed completing this one. You thankfully can't, but I just wanted to warn people in case they run into that same issue. Mishima may as well have the most simple Confidant bonuses in the game. They give you more experience, and that's about it. That being said though, they're also useful to any kind of playstyle at any point in the game, and the earlier in the game you get them, the bigger a benefit they'll be. The ability to let backup members earn experience and, later on, the same amount of experience as the main party is also invaluable, as it lets you swap out all of your team members whenever the situation requires, without needing to worry about training them all. There's really nothing else to say here. These abilities are simple but good, so complete Mishima's requests in mementos whenever you can. Despite having possibly the darkest parody art in the Persona 5 deck, the Sun Arcana still represents happiness, positivity, and optimism. It has some similarities to the Star Arcana, but that one more specifically represents hope following tragedy, while Sun is more a sign that after a lot of losses and setbacks, your life is finally on the right track and things are looking up. Mythologically, personas of this arcana are associated with the sun or the sky. Many of them in Persona 5 are birds or otherwise celestial flyers like Yolunga the Rainbow Serpent. Gameplay-wise, some personas in 3 and 4 tended to specialize in fire, wind, and light skills. In 5, that's changed a bit, and they mostly lean towards nuclear, electric, and still some wind. Nuclear is the main theme though, fittingly for the sun, and most of these personas are weak to Psi. The Sun Confidant in Persona 5 is Toranosuke Yoshida, or the Street Orator. While it does take some effort to start and isn't available very often, it's made up for by the fact that you never need points with this Confidant. It is guaranteed to rank up every time you spend time with him. Just like Moon. This means you never need to carry a Sun persona, and your dialogue choices don't matter. Despite this, it's not a Confidant that you want to neglect because like Maruki, it is on a deadline. And unlike Maruki, this is not immediately obvious, but he will warn you about it later on in the year. You are unable to progress Yoshida's Confidant after November 17th. Yoshida's bonuses are all to do with negotiation. The first one, Diplomacy, comes at rank 2 and is arguably his best ability. This means that whenever you ask a shadow for money or items, you will get the dialogue option, "You can do better than that." Choosing this gives you a chance of the shadow giving you the same amount of yen or the same item again. And you can repeat this indefinitely. The only downside is, every time you do it, there's a chance the shadow will get angry, cancel the negotiation, and either attack you or summon reinforcements. But if you make sure to do it against a weak enemy, this downside is nothing. In the vanilla game, Diplomacy was one of the best ways to grind money, especially early on in the story. I remember having a lot of fun with this in Madarame's Palace back then. The next 3 abilities all work roughly the same way. They give you a random chance of the ask for money, ask for items, or recruitment option in negotiation, becoming a better version. You'll know it activates because the dialogue choice will change to what I've listed here, and it will be highlighted in red. Mind Control I find the most useful, as Join My Cause instantly has the shadow join you as a persona. Fundraising and Manipulation, on the other hand, these abilities were infamous in vanilla Persona 5 because if they activated, they would override Diplomacy. Why is this bad? Well, think of it this way. It's much better to ask for 2,000 yen 5 times than to ask for 4,000 yen once. I'm not sure if this was a bug or intentional behaviour, but it meant that many players avoided ranking up this Confidant after getting Diplomacy, because unlocking Fundraising arguably made Diplomacy worse. But that's not the case in Royal. Not only do these abilities no longer prevent Diplomacy from activating, they also stack with Diplomacy, meaning that if you get Fundraising to trigger, you can ask the shadow for large amounts of money over and over. This would have been hilariously busted in the vanilla game, and the only reason it isn't in Royal is that Royal added far better methods of money grinding. Oh, and then there's his rank 10 ability. Diplomacy is so good, many people forget about this one. It's very similar to Special Treatment, except it only works on recruiting enemy shadows via negotiation. I personally think this is a fun concept and much more balanced than special treatments, but sadly that's the very reason it doesn't see much use. So overall, Toranosuke's abilities are in a very weird spot in Royal. They've technically been buffed considerably since the vanilla game, but since Royal also buffed a lot of other Confidants and added a whole lot more broken stuff, it honestly feels weaker than it should be. Still, Diplomacy is one of the best early Confidant abilities in the game, and he's a fantastic character, so this is one I highly recommend doing. The Judgement Arcana is the final stage on the Fool's journey, and always shows up in a reading when the Fool is at a major turning point. It represents an individual finally realizing their true calling and grasping the meaning of their life. An ultimate feeling of acceptance and fulfillment with the way things have gone. Personas of this arcana are typically very powerful beings from their respective myths, and are commonly associated with Judgment Day myths and the final judgment of dead souls. Gameplay-wise, they're some of the strongest personas you'll find, and typically have the almighty inheritance type, which lets them inherit any skill, while also learning powerful almighty skills like the Negado line, as well as the strongest buffs and debuffs you'll find. It's a little weird that we're getting this arcana now, right? Well, Joker isn't establishing this Confidant until far into the future, and that means it's very unique in its gameplay mechanics. As we're currently in the middle of a flashback where we haven't established this Confidant yet, you don't get Arcana Burst for it until the story catches up with the interrogation. You also won't be getting any Confidant benefits until that point. The whole thing is purely a glimpse of what's to come. All I can say is that it ranks up automatically with story progress, just like Fool and Magician. Before we go over this arcana, I would just like to acknowledge that in English, Takuto Maruki is voiced by Billy Kametz, who passed away from cancer in June 2022. Maruki is one of my favourite characters in Persona 5 Royal, if not my actual favourite, and a big part of that is just due to how well he brought this character to life. Both Maruki and his Confidant are new to Royal, and being a new Confidant, this means an Arcana from a non-standard tarot deck. Previous re-release social links use the Aeon Arcana from the Thoth deck, and they've finally moved away from that. The Councilor, or Consultant, comes from a Spanish deck, El Gran Tarot Esoterico. Apologies if I butchered that, I have no experience in Spanish. There it's known as El Consultante, and as you can see here, it's numbered 1, which makes it a counterpart to the Magician Arcana, meaning its symbolism is much the same. Creativity, initiative, self-confidence, and the power to harness one's talents. However, and this is just my personal interpretation, the Councilor seems to suggest an older, wiser mentor figure, imparting these lessons in someone younger, rather than the Magician in Persona games typically acting as more an equal friend. Personas of this arcana tend to be either wise mythical beasts, or beings associated with the mind and the psyche, such as the Mitamas, as well as Dionysus, who was often considered a symbol of madness. Most of them existed in the original game, but belonged to different arcanas. In gameplay terms, they represent the duality of the mind, as they'll either focus on healing and status curing spells, or inflicting the ailment's brainwash and despair on enemies. Maruki's Confidant is unique in a few ways. He doesn't have a lot of availability, but he is almost always available on rainy days. Most of his rank up scenes offer plenty of dialogue choices to gain points, making ranking him up fairly easy. Especially since ranks 1 and 2 are given to you for free when you first meet him. On the other hand, the back 6 ranks of the Confidant are locked out for a while until plot progression, And this Confidant is one of the few in the game to have a strict deadline. If you want to finish it, you must reach rank 9 by November 18th. If you do, you'll automatically get rank 10 on November 18th. But if you don't, you've lost your chance to max out this Confidant forever. Thankfully, the game very clearly warns you about this right from the start of his Confidant. As for what Maruki can do for you, the answer is quite a lot. For one, most visits with him increase Joker's maximum SP by 5, and these increases carry over to New Game Plus. But his actual Confidant abilities are just as good. Detox X and Detox DX give Joker the chance to instantly recover from any status ailments at the start of his turn. If Joker starts a battle with low SP, Mindfulness and Wakefulness has a chance of restoring some of it. Once you unlock these abilities, Joker essentially has infinite SP, as you can just keep entering battles until they trigger. But the real prize here is Flow and Flow Boost. Flow might just be the best early Confidant ability in the entire game. For only rank 3 of Councilor, Joker gains the chance to start any battle with Charge and Concentrate for free. That is a guaranteed 2.5 times damage to his first attack in that fight. This ability might just be one of the reasons why Royal is significantly easier than vanilla Persona 5. It's that powerful. And at rank 7 you get an even higher chance of triggering it. Honestly, to me the rank 10 boost from this is a little disappointing given how good Flow is. But that's just how it goes. So, moral of this story is, for Joker, going to therapy is extremely worthwhile. Oh, and one more quick side note I just wanted to say. Maruki is the stingiest character for gifts in the game. You wouldn't really think so, but he only has one gift that he likes, and that's the blaring alarm clock. The Faith Arcana comes from the, and once again forgive me if I butcher this pronunciation, Visconti Sforza. These cards were commissioned by the Duke of Milan, Filippo Maria Visconti, and his successor, Francesco Sforza. Notably, this is the oldest tarot deck known to still exist, dating back to around 1466. Also notably, no complete copy of this deck survives. It exists as loose sets of cards scattered around various museums of the world. The Faith card specifically comes from the collection at the Yale University Library, which contains trump cards representing the 3 Catholic theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. As this deck predates tarot being used for divination, they were just playing cards at the time, there's no official symbolism attached to this card, and any you find online is entirely speculation. But here's mine. Faith as a concept, in my opinion, is trusting something to be true even though you can't objectively prove it. In addition to religious faith, you can also talk about faith in yourself or in others. However, faith can be dangerous if it's blind or placed in the wrong person. When looking over the personas of this arcana, I noticed there's a general theme of fairy tales and fantasy to them. Unicorn and Phoenix being mythical creatures, Orichalcum being a common material in fantasy settings, and Okuninushi, Cuchulainn, and Siegfried are mythological heroes. Why Adavaka? Well, he was originally a baby-eating monster that was redeemed by the Buddha, so I suppose he counts too. Gameplay-wise, they tie into Kasumi's athletics theme by mostly being physical attackers, though many of them also learn revival skills. A unique combination. And speaking of unique, Kasumi's Confidant is very much so. Firstly, it only has 5 ranks as opposed to 10, but ranks 2, 3, and 4 give Joker a permanent +5 to HP. Just like Maruki's SP bonuses, these carry over to New Game Plus. I'm actually not sure if the exam bonus applies to Kasumi, but what I am sure of is that her schedule is also unique. She doesn't have set days of the week where she's available. She's simply available on specific dates in the calendar. You'll want to check your text messages because she'll always send you an invite on days she's available. And with only 5 ranks, it's not that hard to max her out. Which is fortunate since this must be done before the 3rd semester in Royal. Contrary to popular belief, maxing this out is not a requirement to unlocking the 3rd semester, but it does change some things there if you do max it out, and you'll no longer be able to progress this one if you don't have it maxed by that point. Kasumi only has 2 Confidant bonuses. At rank 2, you get Tumbling. Once you have this, if a shadow on the field is about to get the drop on you, there's a chance Joker will dodge it by doing a backflip. This also puts him in the perfect position to deliver an ambush of his own if you press the X button immediately afterwards. But the real prize here is Shanae Hook, which is supposed to have an accent on the E, but the P5 font I'm using doesn't have that character. You get the idea though. This allows you to ambush enemies from a distance with the grappling hook. The enemy has to have their back turned to Joker, and you need to be a specific distance away. If you're too close, you'll just do a normal ambush. You can tell that you're in range of this when Joker's wrist glows red. The real benefit is not a long-range ambush, it's the fact that if you do this, enemies have a chance of starting the battle with Confuse, Dizzy, or Fear status. This combos very well with Psi attacks for technical damage. If only we had a party member who specialized in Psi skills, then we could really make use of this. Just something you may want to keep in mind for later. But for now, this is a Confidant that's on a deadline, so I recommend focusing on it, but it's worth doing for Shanae Hook alone. To the surprise of probably few people, Akechi was holding back his real Confidant benefits all this time. Regardless of what rank you had him at Royal by now, he always gets follow-up and smooth talk when he joins the party in November. And from this point on, he'll learn the other typical party member abilities, Hurry-Sen Recovery, Endure, and Protect, at the higher ranks of his Confidants. You might be wondering how you get ranks 9 and 10 if you can only reach up to rank 8 in Akechi's Confidant before he betrays you. Don't worry, as long as you got to rank 8 beforehand, 9 and 10 will come automatically later in the story. If you didn't reach rank 8 by this point though, you are locked out of finishing Akechi's Confidant. True Self, New Confidants. Yeah, it was kind of obvious that Yoshizawa's Confidant didn't end at rank 5, but it will only progress to this point if you reached rank 5 before the 3rd semester, and of course, unlock the 3rd semester by maxing Maruki. Her bonuses to HP are mostly the same, as is her availability, and to the surprise of likely no one, she has a romance route now. I don't know if you caught on to what I did with her Confidant profile. I made sure there was something a little off about it. She actually represented the reverse Faith Arcana before. Sumeria's Confidant does indeed have new bonuses past rank 5, though they're all the same abilities that other party members get. Follow-Up and Fitness Talk are both unlocked at rank 6 though, and Fitness Talk is the best negotiation ability in the game as it works on everything, though it's not available until ridiculously late. Other than that, I'd recommend getting her to rank 10 as soon as possible, just so she has Hurry-Sen Recovery, Endure, and Protect. Like the rest of the party. And this is why we haven't got the Max Confidant's Thieves' Den award yet. Faith does not count as maxed out until it reaches its true rank 10. As a bonus, here's my Confidant tier list For gameplay only, I just want to stress, this has nothing to do with their characters or the quality of the story in their Confidants, just their bonuses. A lot of placements here are self-explanatory, but I'll go over some of them. Chihire's rank 1 and 5 abilities speed up the other Confidants' progressions so much that she gets an S rank for that alone. And I rank the twins above Kawakami because special treatment is just that broken. I've grouped all the party members in one tier. That's because I consider Endure, Protect, and Hurry-Sen Recovery alone so useful in battle that even the weaker party Confidants are a B rank at worst. I've ordered them in this tier based on how good I think their other benefits are, though Ryuji and Futaba would both be an S tier if I was not doing a party tier. Morgana's here even though I don't have any of the other plot Confidants listed just for consistency. The B tier might be the most controversial of my opinions. If this was vanilla P5, Yoshida would easily be a high A tier or even low S tier, but as I said in his bio, Royal has so many more broken things that you don't need his bonuses as much. Sojiro, I just don't rely on his SP items as much with my personal playstyle, but I know a lot of players really like him, and for Takemi, I really just go for the SP Adhesive 3, which means that in a lot of guides I see, she gets left at rank 7 for a while. Order's the only one in C tier because, as I said, I feel like his bonuses aren't as necessary in Royal when guns in general were buffed so much, and when Iwai is a lot better, and the bottom ranked one is self-explanatory. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.